what you are born with and what you get from your mother and father.
Yes.
And there is a lot of research and a lot of cancer research goes to that direction, but we don't really have a cure yet for all the genetic baggage that you carry. You can't change the makeup of people yet.
You know, I'm so fascinated because all of this package are for the women who are here. Then I begin to wonder, about those who are in the third world countries. How are they protected how do they do the screening? Because we don't have these machines over there. And at the same time, people cannot even afford to go to, some people can't afford to go to even ordinary general hospital. Talk less of, you know, having screening for their breast and whatever. So those women down there who are 50, 75, what are they supposed to do? Even though they are in a third world country where they don't have these machines for screening their breasts, what can they do? I mean, from a medical point of view, you must have a suggestion for them.
Well, there's two things I think you can do when your country doesn't have a screening program, but that also counts for here where we have a screening program, because a screening program doesn't protect you from everything. You still
But at least you know.
Yeah.
At least you know, because if you are able to know on time that something has pumped up in your breast and then you are not ignorant about it, I mean, it can easily be rescued. You can easily be rescued, and when you don't know and something is growing without you knowing.
No, you're right in that case. I mean, screening helps to detect cancer in an early stage.
Yeah.
But it's not 100% guarantee that everything is detected, because you always have false negative, which we call as doctors, is that you are screened, you have a photograph, but somehow it's not seen on the photograph that there's the start of cancer growing. And in between that period, I mean, you can't screen somebody every day, and in between that period of 2 years that is in breast cancer, between the interval between the time that you get screened, something still can grow. So that leads me to the women in countries where there's no screening programs, which we advise every woman, even here where you screen, always be alert. Examine your breasts at least 2 times a month. If you're still menstruating, before you menstruate and after you have your menstruation, and feel your breasts, palpate them, and feel if you feel any lumps or abnormalities that you haven't felt before. And look at your breasts in the mirror if you see any skin changes. And for women in third world countries, they can do that, and if they feel something, then take the initiative to go to a doctor. There's one good thing for women in third world countries, because in most non-Western countries, breast cancer is less common. And it has to do with health, with lifestyle. The Western lifestyle is not very good for these kind of cancers. So, for instance, in West Africa, there's less breast cancer than in Northern Europe.
And
but that changes once you start living in Holland. So you can't say, oh, I'm West African, I have a smaller chance of breast cancer, because once you live in a country for a long period of time,
you acclimatize. And together also, their sickness become your sickness. Even as their nationality become your nationality, then your sickness as well become your sickness.
And I think it has a lot to do with the way people live their life here, and the foods that are eaten here. We eat much more processed foods with things in it which you in third world countries where people still eat directly from the land, so to say, without all kinds of preparation. But that's just a theory, it's not really proven.
So in this all of these screening exercises that are going on, what is the main thing that is being? What is the aim? What is the target group, and at the same time, who is eligible to be screened?
All screening is aiming at detecting cancer in still early enough stage to cure it, to take it away before it can grow out of proportions. And that counts for breast cancer. For women between 50 and 75, they are screened. If we move over to cervical cancer, is that okay? Because otherwise the other ones don't get get into the news.
Yeah.
Cervical cancer is another kind of cancer. It's cancer of the cervix, the start of the womb.
Yeah.
That affects younger women, and that's why the screening starts when you're 30. For a lot of women, it's a wake-up call. They get a letter for the screening of cervical cancer, and they think, oh gosh, I'm getting old, I'm 30. Because that's when you get your first invitation for cervical cancer.
Wow.
Cervical cancer has a totally different origin. That's not some. There's a big association with cervical cancer and a virus which is called HPV, the human papilloma virus. That's also why it affects more younger women, because it affects women that are sexually active or have been sexually active. And it's a cancer that has an infectious origin. A great deal of the cervical cancer are caused by that virus, and that virus is an infection. So it's got a different origin than breast cancer. Breast cancer affects a lot of women. 1 out of every 7 to 9 women get breast cancer. Not that they all die of it. I mean, luckily through screening it's detected a lot. Cervical cancer affects a lot less women, but still, if you get it, you're not happy. So the government did a lot of research and thought to screen on cervical cancer can still save enough lives to put it in a national screening program.
So what's the ratio of that, the cervical cancer? Since you said the one of the breast cancer is about 1 out of 7 to 9 women, and then the cervical cancer is, what's the ratio then?
It's one. It's less than 0.9. So let's say 9 out of every 100,000 women get cervical cancer. So that's not a lot. That's not a lot. But the thing is, it's very hard to cure. So that's why it's good if you can detect it in an early stage. And how that's detected is that you get an invitation by that same national screening program. So it's the same as we talked about from breast cancer, how you can invite is the same. You don't get invited every 2 years, but every 5 years. And that's just because cervical cancer, well, they've done research. If you do it every 5 years, most of the starting cervical cancer you can detect and treat it before it grows out.
Okay.
And it's done, this is, the breast cancer is done at special units, what I told you about those buses.
Yeah.
Cervical cancer is done by the GP. The invitation comes from the government organization, but with that invitation, there's information with it that tells you go to your GP to get your pap smear. I think that's the word in English. Yeah? You get a smear, a cervical smear,
Yes.
and that's done in the GP office, usually by the doctor assistants. And what they do is they go with a speculum inside the vagina,
Yes.
and then they swab the cervix.
Yes.
They take some cells off. They collect them in a little container.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's sent to the laboratory, and the laboratory checks it if there are any cells in that seem like they might grow into something not so good. And, which is quite new for the last couple of years, they check for the human papilloma virus, that HPV virus, because if they detect that, the chances of cervical cancer are higher.
Mm-hmm.
And not now yet, but from 2016, every woman that gets a cervical smear is checked on the human papilloma virus.
Yes.
And if you have that, you come in a different kind of screening program. You are checked more often than when they don't find it. Now it's every woman every 5 years. From 2016, depending on whether you have the human papilloma virus, if that's been in your smear more often or less often.
Okay, you made mention that this cervical cancer is mostly caused because of infections.
Mm-hmm.
That means, is it SDI?
No,
What
no,
then?
it's not SDI, and 70% of women in their lifetime get infected with human papillomavirus. So it's more common to have it than to not have it. And there are a lot of different kinds of human papillomaviruses, and not all of them are associated with cancer. And you can't call it an STI because even if you protect yourself with condoms, which is the way to protect yourself against STIs, you can still get infected. So you get it through having intercourse,
Yes.
but a condom doesn't give as much protections as other not other. I rephrase myself, as to STIs. And that's why, and you might have heard about that too, why a couple of years ago they started to vaccinate young women, teenagers, 14 years old, with a vaccine against human papillomavirus. Because if you vaccinate young women before they ever have sex, and that's why they choose the age of 14,
yes.
hoping that they don't have sex before that, which
Exactly,
is, of course, not totally true.
But the fact is that many of them are not going for that vaccination because of the effects. As I heard.
Yeah, there's been a lot of debate. There was a lot of fear for it. It came quite suddenly, and also it feels, for most parents, it feels different to get a vaccination for mumps or for tuberculosis than for something that their daughters can catch while having sex.
Yeah, exactly.
And that made it quite a different thing. And some parents, I had parents in my office who should I go, doctor, should I not, should I let my dog, am I not giving her a ticket now to have sex without being afraid for having cervical cancer? It's different. It was surrounded with a lot of fear for this is a new vaccine, what will it do? And then things came from the United States that some women got sick from the vaccine, which is always the case with vaccines. There's always isolated cases where a vaccine can harm you more than it can protect you. But in the big scale, if you look at the big group of women, that's actually not the case. So they repeat, every 14-year-old that didn't do it the first time still gets an invitation again if she doesn't want to reconsider doing it.
Wow.
Still, it doesn't protect against all HPV viruses. So with cervical cancer, it's also still the screening, getting the vaccination. It will never rule out that you'll get it. It will diminish the chance that you get it. And as for breast cancer, I told always be aware, feel your breast as a woman twice a month. For cervical cancer, I want to say, if you're experiencing blood loss between your periods, especially if you experience blood loss while you're making love, those are signs that could, and cervical cancer is very rare, but that could be a sign of cervical cancer, and then visit your GP.
Wow. So
don't just rely on the screening.
Yeah. So just like you said that the breast cancer, as we discussed, could be more peculiar with women who are in the Western world because of what they are eating. Right. What about the cervical cancer? What has it got to do with the African young women?
Cervical cancer doesn't favor women from third world countries or African countries because its origin is infectious.
Yeah.
And it actually affects West African women probably a little bit more. We're not sure. We know that Suriname women are affected more by it because those have been a subject of research while West African women...
Is there any reason? Is it because you say that people at this age, is it because the people are sexually alert or sexually active?
The thing is, there is a relationship with how young you have your first sexual contact. And we know, we discussed STIs before. And
I understand.
we talked about how young, and in the Suriname and Antillean culture, and also some African culture, women mature
sex
quicker
early.
and have
Yes.
sex earlier. They
Yes.
marry earlier, so you have sex earlier also. So that might be a reason.
Well, Dr. Judy Van Es, we have to take a short break at this moment and then request our listeners to give us a call. In case you are listening to this broadcast, please, and you want to contribute or you want to ask any question to the doctor, please give us a call on 027 37 371619. Give us a call and let's hear your voice.